Hey, what's going on? It's Stranger and welcome to another YouTube music production video where my mission is to help you succeed in making music. And I've been getting a lot of requests for this one, and after countless hours, I'm proud to say that I finally figured out the bass sound in Dillinja's Hard Noize. Comment down below, let me know what is your favorite Dillinja track. Now, I didn't think it was humanly possible to recreate this sound because the tools were a lot different back then. It was a lot more analog based. However, the software has gotten so much better now that you can really replicate these analog sounds. Now, I can't say it's exactly like Hard Noize because every producer has their own tools and approach. So I'm going to say this is my approach on how I would make that sound in Hard Noize. And big ups to the man Dillinja. He's been a major inspiration over the years. His studio technique and his sound has paved the way for the future of drum and bass music. And if you're new to the Dillinja sound, then I recommend you to check out this album, My Sound, which is a collection of some of his biggest hits, and you'll get an idea of why this man is so important. And also, I'll be making this project available for a couple bucks if you want to support me. However, I will have to exclude the patterns from Hard Noize to respect Dillinja, but the project and instrument is there if you want to use it for your own track. And stick around to the end. I'm going to show you how to make this sound your own. And by the way, I have a new Skillshare course. It's called Ableton Essential Exercises Level 2 Drums Intermediate. If you're a beginner in Ableton, then I recommend you to check out my course where you'll learn the basics on how to use the software. And also, I want to invite you to our Discord community where you can meet like-minded producers and post up your tracks for feedback. The community is growing and we got something really good going on. And hey, if you want to get more content like this, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and share. All that also helps my channel grow. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Okay, so we're going to be doing this with Serum. And the first thing is set oscillator A to the distorted bass dropper. The reason why I chose this is it has that nasal character and it also has a lot of grime, which we can use to create that grimy Dillinja bass. Now we're going to adjust the wavetable position up to around 11 o'clock around here. We're going to be modulating the wavetable position later on. Now oscillator B is going to be enabled and we're going to be using the BSOD square. And this is going to be playing an octave higher, so it has that higher tone. Now before we proceed any further, we're going to set up the LFO because it's going to be used a lot to modulate various parameters to really create that Dillinja wub sound. So the first thing is to enable LFO 1 as an envelope, and then we're going to be setting the rate to a dotted quarter note because the melody in Hard Noize is written with a dotted quarter note. So just make sure the rate is at a dotted quarter note. Now we're going to be setting up the shape to that shape that I usually use, which is kind of like the running up a hill and sliding down a mountain. Some of my viewers has called it the shark fin shape, which I think makes a little more sense. So yeah, just make sure it looks like a shark fin like that. So you get this nice sharp attack and then this decay that curves down like that. Now we just want the center point to be a bit earlier so the attack is quicker. Now we're going to set the warp mode for oscillator A to be FM from B. So now oscillator B will be modulating oscillator A. And we're going to be setting the amount to around here, around 35%. And then let's assign LFO 1 to FM from B and then bring down the amount to around 25. So you get a bit of movement in the bass. Let's also assign LFO 1 to the wavetable position of oscillator A and then just bring the position down to around there. And now we're going to enable the filter and we're going to be using a low pass. However, I will be showing that we can use other filters to create a really cool sound with this technique. I'm just going to use the low 6 for now. And just make sure both oscillator A and B is passing through the filter. And then bring the cutoff down to around 90. So you shave off some of that top end. Let's assign LFO 1 to the cutoff. And then just bring the amount down. Around there makes sense. We just want to create a little more movement. Now let's bring the resonance up to add a little juice. Around 40% will work. Now we're going to add an additional filter by going into the FX section. And this time I'm using MG Low 6. And then we're bringing the cutoff down just a bit around here. Let's bring the resonance up for more juice, around 40%. And let's apply LFO 1 to the cutoff of filter 2. Just bring down the mount around 23, makes sense. So you get more of that squelchy sound. Now we're going to enable the EQ to shave off some of that low end. So turn on the high pass mode. And we're going to cut around 200 Hertz. And let's just bring the Q or resonance down around 40%. The reason why we're going to be doing this is we're going to go back into oscillator and then enable the sub oscillator as direct out so we get a clean sub bass. Now, we're not actually going to be using the sub from this sound. We're going to be designing a separate sub bass, but the sub is there because it impacts how the distortion will behave, which we'll get into in the following steps. So you may want to bring the level of the sub up. Okay, so this is the basic sound in Serum. So the following steps is we're going to be using distortion outside of Serum. Now I have an audio effect rack that does a high-low split, and I have made this available for download for free in previous videos, and I'll leave a link in the description below so you can grab it. But basically the audio effect rack splits the signal in between the high and low frequency. So you have the high, you have the low. Now we're only going to be processing the high portion, so just select the high section. Now the first thing we're going to add is D16's Devaster, which is a multi-band distortion unit. Just make sure it's added before the high pass EQ, otherwise it's going to sound different. Now I'm simply using one of the presets called 303 Roars. You can try the other presets as well. I just adjusted some of the parameters. Each of the filters here represents a different bands, which you can then add distortion on each. Now if you guys want a more in-depth walkthrough on Devaster, then let me know down in the comments and perhaps I can do one in a future video. But basically I just tweaked some of the parameters to bring out some of those extra harmonics. So this is without Devaster, and this is with. And then the next step is we're going to add an additional layer of distortion using Output's Thermal, which I got recently, and it's also a multi-band distortion unit. I really love using it. And then we're going to go into the advanced controls. And basically, I'm just using one of the bands. So in Thermal, it's called stages. So you have stage 1, 2, and 3. So I only have stage 1 enabled. And we're using this to filter it. So I'm at 108 Hertz. So anything over 108 kilohertz will get distorted. And there's a number of different shapes here. I'm using the light shaper. I have the drive at 20 dB. I can show you some of the other shapes as well. So some really warm sounding distortions. I'm loving this plugin. And if you're interested in grabbing Thermal, I have a link below where you can grab it. Now, I will mention I'm still new with this plugin, so I do want to dive in deeper in future videos. I have a feeling we can go pretty crazy with making some distorted bass sounds with this, and I'm looking forward to showing you guys. Now, after you added the second layer of Thermal, you can go back into Devaster and try the different presets, and then you'll really hear how Devaster really brings out the sound of this bass. Now we're getting really close to that grimy bass sound found in Dillinja's Hard Noize. However, one of the main secret ingredients to this sound is that there is a chorus effect to really make this sound almost metallic sounding. So you can pretty much use any chorus effect to achieve this sound. However, I recently just got Native Instruments Choral, which is a really cool chorus effect, so I'm using it here. So it gives the sound a little more width. So here's the sound without choral, and here it is with. Now finally, I adjusted the EQ to bring out some of the mid, so it has more of that mid tone. So here it is without the EQ. Here it is with. It's subtle, but adds a little more oomph to it. Now, here's the sound without all the processing with Serum alone. And here's with all our effects processed. Okay, so we pretty much have the sound now, so let's look at the MIDI notes. Now, the bass line is written in the key of F, and again, the notes are written with a dotted quarter note, so each note is equivalent to 3/8 notes here. So here's the melody. It goes from the F, D to C sharp to C. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we're not actually going to be using the sub from the main bass preset. Instead, we're going to be creating the sub with a separate 808 bass. So I'm going to turn off the low section from the audio effect rack so we only have the top bass. So I have an 808 bass sound designed here with Serum. It's simply a sine wave with a bit of amplitude modulation with envelope 1 here. Using a bass like this just gives it a little more attack when the bass hits. Now I'm using an effect called Boost X, which warms up the sound. Now there's a number of different plugins which do similar things. I used to use Max Bass from Waves years ago. Boost X is basically a more modern version of Bass X. It has a nice little interface which I like, so warms up that bass. And basically the sub bass follows the same melody as the mid bass, but there's just some additional notes to make it a little more punchy. Now here it is with the mid and top bass together. Now there's just one missing component to really make this complete. Now if you listen to Hard Noize carefully, it almost sounds like there's an additional layer of mid bass, which makes it sound like the bass is talking, as if it's going, yeah, 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 yeah. And the way I've achieved this is I duplicated our main bass preset, and then I removed some of the filters so you get more of a long note. So this is what we have. So it's the exact same preset. I just removed the LFO from the filters. And actually, I switched it to this phase 12 filter on the main filter, and then I'm using a band pass on filter 2. However, you can try the other filters as well. They kind of give a similar result. Basically, you want a more full, screechy sounding top bass. And then this is playing the high tone. Now I'm only playing it on the second phrase of the bass where it goes high like that. So I'll just play it for you. So let's hear it all together with the main bass and sub bass. Okay, now that we have the bass pattern, let's look at the drums. I have a basic beat here with a break and some one-shots. And then I have this filtered amen here that plays at the end of the 8-bar phrase. And then I have the original sample found in the intro. Shouts out to Daniel V who told me about this. So it's a sample from the Twilight Zone. I think the episode is Eye of the Beholder. So here's the sample.
Miss? Time for your sleeping medicine, honey. Huh. Is it night already? It's 9:30. Oh.
And then I just added some effects and background sounds, and I recorded myself saying that silly phrase. So there's actually a debate what the vocal actually says in the track. I've always thought it said something about it's a shoe rank, and then I heard someone say kick the shoe rack. So it's a mystery what this phrase really says, and maybe no one will ever know unless Dillinja lets us know. So we have a running joke here, and I recorded myself saying kick the shoe rack.
Kick the shoe rack.
Okay, so let's hear it all together with the intro.
Is it night already? It's 9:30.
Kick the shoe rack.
Okay, so that was my approach to making the sounds in Dillinja's Hard Noize. Now let me know down in the comments how I did. Did I hit it? Am I close? Or is there something I need more to get the sound right? As I mentioned, I'm going to show you how you can take this sound and really make it your own. So I have a half-step beat here. And then I've written this melody here. And then let's hear it with the sub bass and everything together. And then I have this other melody using 8th notes, so I'm creating more of a jump up melody. So let's check this out. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there's different ways you can modulate the sound to make it your own. One of the ways you can do this is trying different filters. So we can select, for example, some of the interesting flange filters, and that'll give you some interesting results as well. We can try some of the distorted band passes. Here's Scream BP. So I encourage you guys to really explore, try the different filter types, try changing the filter shape, really explore the different parameters and really make this sound your own, because the possibilities are really endless here. Alright, to summarize, what we did was we're using Serum with two different waveforms. One has a more nasally waveform and the other is a square wave, and we're using some FM modulation. One of the main things to use is having that shark fin LFO envelope to then modulate the FM as well as the filters. And remember, we're using two levels of filters here. And then once you have that basic sound, then we add two layers of distortion. Now I'm using Devaster as well as Output's Thermal, and they're multi-band distortion units, which gives you a lot more creativity on which bands of the bass you're distorting. And then finally, once you have that distorted bass sound, you're gonna add a chorus effect to make it sound a little more metallic and a little more wide. Now once you have the main bass sound, then you can add an additional sub bass and make it more like an 808, so it has a little more attack. And then finally there's that last layer, which is a longer screechier mid bass. We made that by simply replicating the main Serum preset and then removing some of the LFO modulation, so it's a longer note, and we layered that over the second part of the phrase to make that bass sound like it's actually talking. So this was a crazy bass sound to make, and I've always wondered how the sound was made, and finally achieved it. And once again, shouts out to Dillinja the Dawn, who pioneered a lot of these techniques, and without him, drum and bass wouldn't be where it is today. So definitely check out Dillinja's music, check out his My Sound album. And of course, if you want this project, then check it down in the description below. So I hope you guys enjoyed this, and if you did, make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and share button. And that's pretty much it for today, guys. Thanks for watching, keep practicing, I'll see you at the next video.